thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for being patient. And we get a little bit of a late start here. Appreciate that. We're going to start with opening remarks from the Acting Administrator of OSPR, Ms. Julie Yamamoto.
Thanks, Greg. Lower this down a little bit. Well, Greg introduced me. I'm Julie Yamamoto, Acting Administrator for the Office of Spill Prevention and Response here in California. I just want to welcome everyone to our first back in person kind of hybrid meeting, and it's great to see everyone. So welcome and thank you to all the participants, those on Zoom, those here in person. I know some of you have come a long way to get here, crossed a few picket lines along the way, so it's always exciting in Sacramento. I just wanted to give a shout out to the task force for pulling this meeting together, and special thanks to Meg, Anna, and others from Triangle Associates for herding all of us agency cats for a while. I know it's not easy, but we had a great federal partners meeting yesterday. Had some really good dialogue, and I think we're going to continue in that vein today. Also want to give thanks to our sister agencies, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and Calorie Cycle, for helping us with these great meeting rooms that we've been in for the past couple of days, and all the logistics that have gone along with that. Finally, I just want to express my deep gratitude to all of our partners, all the folks, agencies, public-private entities that we work with here in California and beyond our borders, other states, provinces. All of these folks, we are collectively, and I think Carlos made the astute observation yesterday, that we are one oil spill response community, and our mutual support of one another, our collaborations, our relationships, all of these things make us strong and capable when we need to be, when spills happen. And I just think that today is going to be another great opportunity for us to all reinforce our connections, make some new connections, and improve our practice together. So with that, no spill response meeting is complete without a safety moment. So Greg McGowan, who is our lead for health and safety, among other functions in OSPR, is going to do the honors. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, and apologies to those of you who have been here for the last 2 days. You've heard this speech before, but hopefully there'll be something you can take home and share at your next meeting. So for those of you in the building, from a safety standpoint, there are sirens and alarms should there be something going on. As far as I know, there are no programs going on today that would be tests or drills. So if you hear an alarm, we'll go out the doors we came in, we'll go down the stairs. There are 2 exits. Most of us, if it's open, we'll go out the front exit where the picket organizations are, and we'll go past that across the street to Cesar Chavez Park. That will be our muster point for getting back together. If that door is blocked, there's a door the opposite direction as well that we can go down. There are 2 banks of elevators, but if the alarms are going off, the elevators probably will not be functioning. So use the stairs. If you can't use the stairs, wait at the top of the stairs and we will get someone to help you down. Also want to share, we are committed to creating an environment where everyone belongs and is able to contribute to their fullest potential and achieve excellence. Discrimination and harassment have no place in our work, in our lives, and they're not going to be tolerated. So any form of conduct that creates an intimidating or offensive or hostile work environment is unacceptable. And it's each of us share that responsibility to maintain, monitor, enforce, and act in a positive way. All of us who do spill response, who sit in the unified command, know that you assemble a diverse group of people to make it work. And we need to all be able to perform at our highest level in order to have the best success in our job. I would extend that to the best success in all of our parts of our lives. But certainly if something's going on here, as much as we all nod our heads at speeches like this, we also know these things are happening. There is harassment going on. There are things going on. So if you see something, say something, be a part of the solution. I'm here for you. Certainly come talk to me. If there's anything that's going on, I will do my very best to make sure that that's resolved as well as it can be. In honor of Veterans Day, Thanks to all who are now or have previously served the nation. We appreciate your service. Those of you with family as well who has is serving right now, thank you for that. We appreciate that. And lastly, as Julie said, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I want to express my thanks today for the work that everybody's doing to protect and care for the environment. It matters. It's meaningful. We don't always get thanked for the work we do. Sometimes we get yelled at for the work we do, but we know it matters. It's true. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to work with smart, passionate people who are applying their time and their intellect to things that matter. So thank you for that. And with that, I would like to introduce Meg Harris, our Executive Director of the BC States Task Force. And from Triangle Associates, led the cat herding, as Julie said, or butterfly netting, or whatever it is, and will be leading us through today. Meg?
Thanks, Greg. Great to see everyone. Good to see faces from yesterday. I just want to extend that welcome from OSPR as well, from the whole task force. There are representatives from all 6 members of the task force attending today, and folks from Hawaii joining online. So it's really great to have everyone together and to be able to use this time in person. I have a couple of simple logistical pieces, especially for those folks online. So we have, hi Liz, good to see you. Liz is sitting in Honolulu. So we have just a brief slide for those attendees online today. We have just over 85 people currently online joining us. For those of you that are online, we're here in the room at the EPA headquarters in Sacramento. So a couple of things to point out for those folks that are attending online. We're in a Zoom webinar platform, which is slightly different than the Zoom meeting we used yesterday. Folks online aren't able to share their screen or their video or talk audio through the webinar platform. So we're really going to rely on the chat function for anything technical, any technical challenges that you're having. There are 3 Triangle staff attending online that are going to help us walk through any technical issues for folks online and help us walk through the question and answer and Q&A so that folks online can participate today. So a couple of things. For those of you online, you see that yellow circle around the chat function. Use that for any tech-related issues. The Q&A function you'll use for content-related things, so questions that you have. Again, we'll be monitoring those questions, and we'll be interspersing them with questions from the audience through Q&A. If you feel like these functions aren't addressing something that you need to participate, you can always raise your hand and we'll have someone make sure that we reach out to you and figure out what we need to do to support you. Okay, finally, sorry, my slide is small. So finally, if you want to turn on the closed captioning, that's enabled. So anyone that's online that would like to do that as well. And we'll make sure that anything that gets shared in the Q&A today, use it for comments, use it for questions. You can post resources. We'll be keeping track of any resource list and sending it around to the group. So those of you that don't have direct access to the Q&A, if you're in person, we'll make sure you get anything that comes through there. Good. Yeah, any other tech related pieces that, okay, great. If folks that are online, we're not going to do full introductions today, but I would encourage anyone that's online to put your name in the chat, put where you're coming from and maybe your affiliation, and we'll use that to communicate with one another. Okay, so we have a full agenda today. I'm going to start us off with an executive coordinator update for the task force on behalf of the 6 member jurisdictions. Is that working okay? Oh, yeah, you can have these. Then we'll move into updates from the jurisdictions themselves, 6 updates from each of the states and province. We'll take lunch from noon to 1, and we'll come back for a presentation of the Legacy Awards from 1 to 1:30. We have 4 Legacy Awards to honor today. 3 of those people are able to join us virtually, and so that's exciting to share. And then we'll have 2 sessions in the afternoon with a full panel of speakers for both. I'm really excited for these sessions and the content that's going to be shared. So the first session after Legacy Awards will be on environmental justice and spill response. We'll take a break at 2:45, and then we'll have a session on communication challenges of remote locations. These are topics that the task force has been talking a lot about and are important for the task force at this time. And so we're excited to bring in folks to hear from them about this work and also share out some of the work that the task force jurisdictions are doing. The agendas are on the table outside if you haven't grabbed one, if you're here in person. And they're linked online in the meeting invitation as well as on the Zoom webinar. Before I dive into an executive coordinator update, are there any questions about the logistics for the day? Okay, my colleague Anna is here as well. She's going to be our hybrid liaison, to use words from Spill Response. She's going to be helping me and others communicate with the folks online and ensure that they're able to participate and have questions throughout the course of today. Next slide. Okay, so there's 6 members of the task force, 6 West Coast spill prevention response programs that sit within each of the programs, the agencies below. You can see them on the map as well. So Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, BC Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change Strategy, the Office of Spill Prevention and Response within California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Hawaii Department of Health, Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, and Washington Department of Ecology. Next slide. And the task force really is rooted in history. This is a picture of the original task force members in 1989 on the shores of Prince William Sound. In response to the Exxon Valdez, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the task force in 2019, and we're coming up on 35 years next year. So with that rooting in history, the task force also has a vision for the future. I'm going to share some content from the most recent strategic plan, including this ambitious but guiding vision of no spilled oil. And to do that, a mission of working together to improve Pacific Coast prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery from oil spills. Next slide. To do that, the task force has identified 5 goals and 3 guiding themes. The goals are adapt to changes in oil movement and risk, advance readiness and capacity to respond to spills, deepen our partnerships to make better decisions and expand our knowledge, build and enhance visibility and relevancy of the task force, and nurture organizational health. And all of this is based on these themes of a safe and clean environment, external partnerships, and organizational well-being. Next slide. So how do we do this? The task force is largely comprised of this structure. There's an executive team of the task force, which is agency or program directors. There's a coordinating committee of spill program managers and staff that meet monthly on a variety of topics and progress the work plan. And there are a number of working groups. There's currently 4 working groups. There have been more in the past. Many of these working groups include external partners, such as other state agencies, federal partners, and non-governmental organizations. And folks in this room sit on those working groups, so we appreciate that. The executive coordinator, myself, and the executive coordination team at Triangle supports the task force members in the work that they do. Next slide. So I just wanted to share with you some examples of the topic area work groups that we have. I've listed 8 working groups here that we've had in recent years. And you can see 4 that are in dark blue are the current active working groups that are meeting on a regular basis. So we have a working group that helps organize and track data. We have a drills and exercises working group, research and development, and the prevention education team, or POSPET. POSPET focuses on small spill prevention and education. It's been around almost as long as the task force has been, and it's an interesting niche compared to some of the larger, like big picture spill focus that much of the task force has. Next slide. And of course, we work closely with our partners, many of whom all of you are in the room today, state and local governments, tribes and First Nations, US and Canadian federal agencies, universities, associations, industry, response companies, citizen groups, public interest groups, and more. Next slide. Okay, so I've organized the work of the task force on 5 key themes, and I'm going to take this time to just walk you through a few of the things that the task force as a whole have been doing in the last year. You'll hear from the jurisdictions in just a moment about work that each of the states and province have been doing to address these types of work as well, and the goals of the task force. So I'm going to start with tracking data, sharing information, actions on joint preparedness, priority issues, and engaging with our partners. Next slide. Okay, so a couple examples of data. What are we talking about when we're talking about sharing data? We continue to compile data on the movement of West Coast crude. We track crude movement by rail, pipeline, vessel, and barge for all of the jurisdictions. And we provide an annual map of facilities, refineries, and terminals. That map is printed out in the front of the room if folks want to see it. Next slide. We've paused this year to reflect on our West Coast oil spill data set. We now have 20 years of compiling spill data for the jurisdictions. It's been a significant lift for the jurisdictions getting it into this format of a shared data set. And we're focusing on work that's needed to understand who's using this and how it should be shared in future years. So if this is a data set that you have found useful in the past, we encourage you to communicate with the task force about that. Next slide. Sharing of information, we do this in a lot of different ways, both internal to the task force and external. So task force members continue to meet on a regular basis, at least monthly. We have a listserv of approximately 1,500 partners. We share out events, job postings, information about work that's being done. And we provide bi-weekly news clippings on regional and international oil spill news. You can also see a couple photos on the slide, one from Clean Pacific last year. We had a booth and we worked closely with the coordinators to help with sessions and had speakers at the event. You can also see the last year's annual report here at the bottom. There are copies of that report out on the table out front if you haven't picked one of those up. This is a 2022 report. Next slide. Okay, joint preparedness. So our drills and exercises work group meets quarterly, and the task force members exercise the mutual aid agreement at least every other year. Last year, we did this through a tabletop of the coordinating committee. In the top left of the slide, you see our task force executive from Washington, Carlos Clements. You'll hear from him in just a moment. During the SANS event in Washington and Oregon in 2022. And another picture from the same event in the bottom. And task force members participate in local and regional planning exercises and RRTs, as well as other planning efforts. Next slide. Okay, action on priority issues. In this last year, we wrapped up a 5-year focus on abandoned and derelict vessels. Continued work is obviously needed. I know a lot of partners are still doing this work. One thing we did as a task force this year was compile status updates for our state recommendations for how states can best address and the issue of abandoned and derelict vessels. This work really started in 2017 and kind of peaked in 2019 with the publication of this Blue Ribbon program, which were recommendations to largely the states. This was a US focused program with participation from British Columbia as well, to identify what would be key components of programs and what states had those key components and what states were working towards those. So we checked back in now a few years later to see where states were on that. And we hope to do that every 5 years or so. Another action on priority issues is working together to ensure that jurisdictions have the funding resources they need to do the work that they do. Next slide. So I've just included a couple of other potential priority issues that the task force has been having conversations about this past year, and I anticipate we'll continue to talk about in the coming years. Conversations around satellite devices for responder communications and safety. You'll hear a bit more about this in session 4 this afternoon. Adapting to the new normal of virtual and hybrid ICS for drills and response. This has come up a lot in our drills and exercises, as well as debriefing responses and what that looks like now in our world. Responding to and regulating alternate fuels and biofuels. Climate change and the impacts of meteorological events on spill frequency and type, and how this impacts states in the province working on these issues, and financial responsibility rules and regulations. So you'll see work coming out of the task force in coming years on these. Next slide. And finally engaging with our partners. So members met yesterday with our federal partners, including 6 federal programs and 3 Canadian programs. We also participate in 2 industry-led science advisory groups, and we're here with every one of you today. So I appreciate everyone coming here and being able to share in this work of spill prevention and response. Next slide. So I just want to leave you with this picture. This is the west coast of San Juan Island, False Bay. We're looking out towards Victoria, towards our partners in Canadian waters. And we're also close to the site of the Aleutian Isle, for those of you who participated in that response. This place is why I choose to do this work. It means a lot to me. It represents to me a nexus of international boundaries, as well as the tribes and First Nations with long histories in this area. It also has personal significance as a place that I can teach my almost 3-year-old the joys of king high tides during the summer and long areas of tide flats. So as I'm speaking, I'm sure you have places like this. You can tell it's personal to me. I would just encourage all of us to let these places guide the work that we do, and teach us to be stewards of these places and let us get through like the day to day with attention to the work that we're doing for these places. So with that, I will take any questions about the task force as a whole. I can answer questions. I would like to direct them to task force members, and then we'll get to hear from our jurisdictions themselves.